Treat is live. Wow. Luckily, my wife not here. She would have told y'all to shut up. No. Well, welcome to Aletheia Church. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kevin. I have the privilege and honor of serving as one of the campus ministers here at Aletheia Church. Now, over the past few weeks, we've been in a series coming out of the book of Habakkuk, or Habakkuk, whichever one you decide to use. I'm going to say Habakkuk. And we've been looking at some difficult topics, addressing some difficult topics. In week one, it was when we see evil and God seems silent, we have to know that God sees more and his plan is at work. And in week two, it was even when God seems confusing and slow, he still gives us life where we live by faith, and the righteous shall live by faith. In week three, we looked at when God seems unfair and injustice is pervasive, God's justice is still coming. We had to know that God's justice is still coming and to wait on the Lord. And last week, we looked at what do we do when God seems different than we expect. And what we have to do when God seems different is refocus our attention and our vision back to God. There's one more thing that I think we can learn from the prophet Habakkuk. See, there comes a point in time in our life, like in the book of Habakkuk, when life just seems unfair. And more so, you are on the receiving end of this unfairness, and God at times seems silent. It's like, God, I've been praying for you to change my situation, but you have not responded. God, I've been praying for my brother to get saved for 10 years, and he's still in the streets getting it in. My best friend just became my enemy. God, where are you? God, my coworker lied on me so they can get the promotion. God, where are you? And you're looking at your circumstances or your situation like Habakkuk, and things seems cray-cray. It's like, God, where are you? And that is what we are going to look at today. What should we do, or what should our response be when God simply seems gone? There are 4 verses that we can read in Habakkuk to learn what we must do when God seems gone. And those verses are Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4, Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 14, and Habakkuk chapter 3, verses 17 and 18. If you do not have a Bible, the words will be on the screen behind me, or you can stop by the connection area and pick one up for free. Now let's dive in to the word of the Lord and be changed. Habakkuk 2:4. Behold, his soul is puffed up. It is not upright within him, but the righteous shall live by his faith. 2:14. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. 3:17 through 18. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no fruit, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. This is the word of the Lord. Pray with me. God, I ask that today, by the end of this message, that anyone who hears my voice would know what to do when you seem gone. I pray that today you restore the joy of salvation. I pray that if anyone do not know you, that today they will come to know you, God. I ask that we will be a people who live by faith, a people who live by hope, and a people who take joy in you, God, the God of salvation. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, in preparation for this sermon, I had to be real with myself and ask, what is it that I do when God seems gone? And I'm a Christian, and I had to struggle with this question myself. And the answer that was revealed to me is I try to take situations and circumstances and do it on my own ability. I try, if something's not working out, I try to will and force it to work out for the way I want it to work out. Or when I get hurt emotionally, I bury it deep down and just work, and never quite deal with it. I don't take it to the Lord. And then it brought up another question. Why is it that I try to take things into my own hand when God seems gone? It dates back to when I was a young lad, like real young, 4'9" young, like bobblehead Cav young, right? But hey, I used to be short. Both my parents are 5'1", so I'm tall, strong. But, no, but it dates back all the way back then. You laughing because I'm short? But it dates back all the way back then. I remember when I was a kid, and my pops would say, "Yo, Hot, I'm coming to pick you up on Friday." So Friday morning, I would get up after school, come home, pack my bags, and sit by the window. And I would wait for my father and hope that he came to pick me up. And I say hope he would come pick me up because sometimes he failed to show up. But it was this one particular time where he did show up, and I saw him walking towards the house, and I was like, oh, man, I was getting excited, like, man, I hope we go play basketball. You know, everybody thought they was Jordan back then. And then it would be, I hope he would take me to the movies. Or I hope we can go downtown, Midtown, and do something fun. But none of that happened. What happened was he took me to my aunt's house, and after I said what's up to everybody, I went back into the living room, and I realized my father was gone. And later that night, as I was sitting by the window, the tears dried up because I was done wondering where had my father gone. Something in me clicked in that moment. I was no longer going to wait around or wait by a window, hoping that he would come pick me up. In that moment, by that window, a lie was born. A lie was birthed. And that lie was I had to place all of my hope and my trust in myself, that I would have to be the object of my faith, that I had to take matters into my own hands if I was going to make it in this world. So the next morning, I got up with my bobblehead and walked to the train, and I rode all the way home. And the lie rode all the way home with me, and it grew up with me till today. And many of us, when God seems gone, we begin to revert back to our own way of doing things. We decide that we're not going to wait around for God. We're not going to sit by a window wondering where God is. But what should be our proper response to the question when God seems gone? And that's what we're going to examine. And Habakkuk 2:4 says, "Behold, his soul is puffed up. It is not upright with him, but the righteous shall live by his faith." And before we look at how we live by faith, I want to explain what faith is. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Faith is where or what you place your confidence in. It is the object of where your trust is. It is the thing you trust to deliver you or save you from something and deliver you to something. Example, imagine you was going cliff jumping into the water, right? Now, I tell you to imagine that because I'm not going to do that, all right? 1, I'm afraid of heights. 2, I don't know how to swim. Don't stereotype me, all right? Don't look. I saw it. Don't do it. I'm taking swim lessons this summer. Haven't signed up yet, but I'm going to take them. God, by faith, I'm going to take them swim lessons. But no. So you imagine jumping off a cliff into the water. And on the way down, you didn't jump far enough away from the rock, so you injure yourself. And you're paddling in the water, struggling, and you look up, asking for help, and the kid yells down and say, "Hey, I have some Play-Doh, or I have a life jacket." No one in here would say, "Throw down both. I got faith in both." No one is going to say that. See, we would place our faith in the life jacket, while Play-Doh, it may seem fun, but it's not life-saving. See, the object of where we place our trust must be life-saving, must be trustworthy, and it must be faithful. And only God are those things. All else is just Play-Doh. Another example to help us get this understanding of the object of our faith. You guys ever played that game? I don't know what it's called, where you fall back. You know that one? Yeah, I don't do that neither. But that game, right, that you guys play. So, imagine, Pastor Donnie, if it was you, I'll let you catch me, man. If he had my back for 10 years strong, he married me and baptized me. I love you. Anyway, that's not in the notes. So imagine there was a 2-year-old behind you saying, "Fall back, I'll catch you." Or imagine the strongest individual you've ever met, you've ever seen, the strongest individual known to man saying, "I got you, fall back." Chances are we're going to go with the strongest individual, right? We're not going to go with the 2-year-old. The object of our faith will be the strongest individual. So we see when we live by faith, the object of our faith has to be trustworthy, has to be strong enough to support us, to catch us every time. Like the life jacket, it has to have the ability to save us. And Habakkuk tells us that the individual that we must place our faith in is God. So when God seems gone, we must live by faith. God has to be the object of where we place our trust. And we see the object of Habakkuk's faith was God. He did not attempt to place his confidence in his abilities. He went to God in prayer first. At that moment in the text, in the Bible, in Habakkuk, people around him, they were in love with doing evil. They were wicked. Things were dark and grim. The people of God were about to be attacked, defeated, and captured. That's what was revealed to the prophet Habakkuk. Now, if I was the prophet Habakkuk, and the Lord said, "Hey, your enemy coming to you," first thing I would have did, call all the homies, "Yo, let's go, lock and loaded, they coming," right? The last thing I would have did was, "God, pray, help me." That's not what I would have done. But Habakkuk placed his faith in God, believing that although things seem horrible at the moment, that God will bring about a better future, that God will deliver him out of that situation. See, the object of Habakkuk's faith was not his own intellect, not another individual, not some relationship. It was God. We must place our confidence, our trust in God to bring about a better future. We don't place our confidence and trust in anything outside of God. See, we live by faith by constantly placing our trust in God, allowing God to be the object of our faith, because he's the only one that is 100% faithful and trustworthy. We must live by faith in God, who is the object of our faith, and not by our own abilities or something other than God. We live by faith every day by placing all your trust in God on a daily basis, even when God seems gone. So I ask you today, what is the object of your faith? What or who are you trusting in? Is it 100% trustworthy? Does it 100% have your best interests in mind 100% of the time? Is it 100% faithful? If God is not the object of your faith, then your faith is misplaced, and it will fail you 100% of the time outside of God. So when God seems gone, we must live by faith. God must remain the thing to where you place your trust. See, when your family life is on the rails, or when relationships are on the rope, when nothing seems to be going right, it's easy to have misplaced faith. But we must place our faith in God. We must live by faith, not by anxiety, right? Because anxiety just begets more anxiety. We mustn't live by worry, because worry just makes us more worrisome. We must not live by sight. We must not live by what we see, but we must live by faith. Not by what's in front of you, but what is to come with faith in God. So when God seems gone, the first thing we must do is redirect our attention to God and place our faith in God and not our own abilities, not our emotions, not our feelings, or someone or something else. We must live by faith. And the second thing we learn from Habakkuk that we must do when God seems gone, we can find it in verse 2:14 that says, "For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea." Habakkuk is telling us that we can live with hope because God's glory will cover the earth, meaning brighter days are coming, brighter days are ahead, and that God's promise for your life will come to pass. And when we talk about hope, live by hope, hope is sometimes, hope carries this thing of doubt. Like you ask someone a question and they say, "Well, I hope so," right? That carries some connotation of doubt. That's not hope. That's not biblical hope. And biblical hope is also not wishful thinking. Like you're wishing something was the case that is currently not. It's not wishful thinking. In fact, wishful thinking is a decision-making based on self-delusion. That's wishful thinking. Kind of like the lie that I believe, that I was qualified enough to take my life into my own hands and live it with my own ability. See, that was a delusion. That was wishful thinking. It's not biblical hope at all. So while faith is where or what you place your trust in, the object of where you place your trust, hope is what you expect and trust the object of your faith to accomplish. Hope is what you expect and trust the object of your faith to accomplish. Biblical hope is having a confident expectation and assurance based upon a sure foundation for which we wait with joy and full confidence. It is having a confidence that comes with knowing for sure, with no question, no doubt, no wishful thinking, what we have been promised by God and His Word will happen. That is biblical hope. And some of us hear the word hope, and you may ask yourself, what is that? And that's because at the moment you feel hopeless, you feel despair, you feel overcome with a sense of futility or defeat. You may be feeling like your life will always be this way, that you will always be struggling with the things you are struggling with. While I was delusional about what I could accomplish without God, some of you are delusional about what can't be done in God. See, you're believing a different kind of lie. You may say things have always been this way for years. You've been struggling with the same thing for years, and this is just going to be your story, and it can't change. You don't see it improving. And to that, today I tell you, the devil is a liar. The devil is a liar. That's not your story. You can and will have hope in God. And I believe that today you will have hope in Jesus' name. Habakkuk shows us that we can live with hope. Notice, if you was with us, in chapters 1, when Habakkuk first opens up, he's complaining. Straight out the gate, he's complaining to God. He was sending his complaints to God, but what he was not doing was confessing those complaints to be his life. He wasn't complaining and confessing that to be his life because he knew that as the glory of God will cover the sea someday, meaning that the problem in front of him will be solved someday. Believing that the object of his faith, which is God, would do what he said he would do. And just as God said his glory will cover the entire earth someday, then Habakkuk knew that God was working out his current situation, even though it did not appear to be so at that current moment. He placed his hope in God, not in his political affiliation, not in his status, not in himself, not in a relationship. He placed his hope in the only thing that was 100% trustworthy, and that is God. And for us, we have to be careful about what we confess with our mouths. See, the words we speak over our life, we have to be careful because if we're not careful about those things, then we will fall into despair and we will fall into hopelessness and our faith will be shattered. And let me tell you, it is okay to go to God with complaints, as Habakkuk showed us. That's A-okay. God wants to hear your heart, right? But this is how we ought to do it, what we learn from Habakkuk. You send up the problem to God and confess down with hope the promise of God. You send up the problem to God and confess down with hope the promise of God, believing that he will accomplish the very thing that he said he will accomplish in your life. So we may look at our current situation and it seems as if God is gone, but in those moments, like Habakkuk, we must confess the promises of God over our life and over our circumstances. You may say, Lord, my marriage is on the rocks. It is difficult, but Lord, I thank you that he who finds a wife finds a good thing. You may say, yes. You may say, Lord, my bills are piling up, but I thank you that you provide all of my needs. God, I feel depressed, but I thank you that I am not a depressed individual. I thank you that I am loved. I thank you that I am cared for. I thank you that I am adored. I thank you that I am a conqueror through you. See, we can speak those things. We can confess those things over our life because our hope is in the promise of God and the future that he is bringing about better days. And that's where he brings about real hope, because we can trust in the object. If he's the object of our faith, then we can hope in him. He will bring forth the solution in our confusion. So when God seems gone, we must live by faith. We must live with hope. And the third thing we must do is take joy. In verses 17 through 18, it says, though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no fruit, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. Habakkuk is telling us here that joy is not based on our current circumstances, but in God. Verse 17 is saying everything will eventually be stripped away. All the comfort will be stripped away. Their food, their shelter, the meat, the drink will be stripped away. See, God's people were about to become prisoners of war. Habakkuk looked at all of that, his whole situation, and it looked dark. And he said, yet I will take joy in the God of my salvation. We see him living by faith with hope to take joy. And he tells us that our joy can't come from some outward source, but it has to come from an inward source, right? The important thing to note about verse 17, where it goes, this is here in verse 17, we see our declaration, right? Though neither the figs nor the vines nor the olives produce any fruit, and though the field be barren, though no food be given. What is he saying? When everything fails and when everyone is gone, Yet our declaration must be, I will rejoice in my God. And that is, our joy shall not depend on outward prosperity, right? Our joy can't come from material possessions. Our joy can't come from our accomplishments. Our joy can't come from what we have or an individual, because those things will pass away. Those things will fail us. Because like the fig leaf failed to produce the fruit, so will everything else except God fail to produce joy. We learn from Habakkuk that whenever God seems gone, the remedy remains to us is this. We must consider what God is to us inwardly, for the inward joy which faith brings to us, so we can hope with full assurance that with God we will overcome fears, we will overcome terrors, sorrows, and anxieties. That even though God may seem gone, he is not gone at all. In fact, he is working on your behalf. God is not gone. And in verse 18, Habakkuk comes to this one resolve, this one thing, and that is to delight and triumph in when all is gone, his God is not gone. And that's how he say, yet. He looks at his situation and say, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. Even though those things look like that, and it doesn't look like an answer is in sight, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. We see taking joy is not a passive thing. It's an active thing, right? You got to take joy. And Habakkuk tells us that. So we look at our situation and we decide to take joy and rejoice, knowing that this God, our God, the God of salvation, will bring about change. When all the odds are stacked up against you and not in your favor, we can take joy in the God of salvation. Now, I don't know your situation today, but I know a God that do know your situation today. And he has your best interest in mind 100% of the time. And he can change that, the God that gives you joy in the midst of your situation. So we must actively take joy and hold on to it. When God seems gone, we must live by faith, live with hope, and take joy in the God of salvation. I want to read to you an excerpt from Matthew Henry, his commentary on Habakkuk, and this is what it says. This is the principal ground of our joy in God, that he is the God of our salvation, our eternal salvation, the salvation of the soul, and if he be so, we may rejoice in him as much in our greatest distress, since by them our salvation cannot be hindered, but may be furthered. Note, joy in God is never out of season. Nay, it is in a special manner seasonable when we meet with losses and crosses in the world, that it may then appear that our hearts are not set upon these things, nor our happiness bound in them. It's an inward joy that God gives us. So when God seems gone, we must live by faith, live with hope, and actively take joy. Today, my pops and I got a really good relationship. He's a homie today, right? But some of you are still sitting at the window, hoping and wondering, where's God? And you decided to no longer wait on God and to believe a lie that your way is better than his. Today, will you stop looking out the window and start looking at God? And I want to tell you this. God is not a man that he should lie. And he tells us this, that he will never leave you. He will never, ever, 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 ever leave you. And the second thing, right after that, it says, I will never forsake you. So God tells us, I will never leave you, never forsake you. I've never forgotten about you. You're precious to him. So you don't have to look out the window wondering, is God gone? God is here right now, right here with you. You can place your faith in him. You can place your hope in his promises because God's word never comes back to him void. In fact, it accomplishes the very thing that it's set out to do. So that way we can take joy in the God of salvation. See, Habakkuk could take joy in the God of salvation because this salvation was his deliverance from the situation. It was his protection in the situation. And the way we take this joy of salvation is through Jesus Christ. It is the God of salvation who sent Jesus into the world to save us from the horrors of the world, to save us from our own evil desires, to save us from our soul being distressed and distraught. It was love that took on chaos to offer us peace in the chaos. It was love that sent Jesus into a world that hated him so that you could know that he is faithful. It was love that sent him to die on the cross so that you could place your faith in him. It was love that raised him from the grave, conquering death and our problems so that you could place your hope in him. And we can take joy because this is salvation, knowing with full confidence and assurance that in Jesus, God is not gone. So the question then becomes not whether or not, what do we do when God seems gone? The question before you today is, will you place your faith and hope in God who is present and experience the joy of salvation? See, our joy is attached to our hope, and our hope is attached to our faith. Some of you in here have never placed your faith or your trust in Jesus. The object of your faith is yourself and your abilities. And you've been working and working to arrive at a place that don't exist. So to you, I ask, God is here right now. Will you place your trust in him? Will he become the object of your faith? Some of us in here trust in God for salvation, but forgot the word of the Lord and his promises, and you're staring out the window hoping that God will do something in your life. I want to tell you that you can trust in him. He's faithful. You don't have to look out the window. He's right by your side. He's here. He's trustworthy. You can place your last dollar on him. He will accomplish what he said he will do. Others in here have forgotten what it is like to have joy in salvation. Somewhere along this life, your joy was fractured, and you're sitting there joyless. But today, I want you to take hold of joy and remember that Jesus came and gave us joy. He gave us joy. So this is our response. The worship team is going to come up, and we're going to worship God, and then we're going to take communion. And when we take communion, we remember what Jesus did on the cross for us. And we do this as Christians, not as something to separate or isolate people, but we remember what this joy of salvation is. But just as importantly as that, we're going to have a chance to respond wherever you're at right now, whether you've never placed your faith in Jesus, or you need hope again, or you need to experience the joy of salvation. As we are praying and worshiping, we're going to have people on the sides who stand with you and believe with you to help God restore your faith, bring you to faith, restore that joy of salvation, and give you hope. And even if you don't know the people on the sides, they are your family, your distant cousins. So don't let anxiety or introvertedness hold you back or pride hold you back. We're going to stand and rejoice in our God. So will you stand with me and worship and take communion?